Hello and welcome back to the farm. Well, the signs of fall here in central New York have begun. So now it seems like fall prep is in full swing. And one of those lingering tasks that I haven't addressed all spring or all summer was setting up a mailbox. Yep, this farm has never had a mailbox. So I had a couple days off this week and I figured this was the time that I was going to buy a mailbox and then set up the mailbox. So in case you've never set up a mailbox like this before, which I hadn't, the process is pretty simple. I dug a hole, it was 20 inches deep, and then I filled it with layers of concrete, water, a little bit more concrete, a little bit more water, and I mixed it as I filled it up with concrete from the base all the way up to the top. I guess it was kind of like a concrete lasagna. Now, I opted to pour a concrete footer for my particular mailbox installation. You could just bury a 4x4 post, 20 inches deep in the ground, but because I decided to go with concrete, which I thought was a little bit stronger, you also have to put a 4x4 bracket down into the concrete so that you can mount a 4x4 post onto, which the mailbox then slides over. So after a little bit of cleanup, I left the concrete to dry overnight. I came back the next morning and I set my 4x4 post. I checked to make sure that the 4x4 post was plumb and level, and then I started drilling in some screws. I put in 4 screws initially, checking to make sure that the post was plumb and square and level each time, and then I added 2 more screws at the very end down toward the base of the 4x4 post, just for some added insurance that the post was going to stay exactly where I put it. Now, this was a really nice looking, pretty simple mailbox kit. It came in 4 separate plastic pieces that basically just snapped together and then you screw them in at the end. But I could not get the first main piece that slides down over the 4x4 post to fit over the metal 4x4 bracket that I had placed into the concrete. It took myself and my neighbor about 15 minutes and a little bit of brute force to get that post cover down over that metal bracket and seated onto the concrete. It just took way too much time. The rest of the process, however, was fairly straightforward. It just took some clicking together of some plastic parts and then tying everything together with some screws at the end. Other than that, it was a pretty simple task. And the end result is pretty nice. I'm going to go so far as to say that I think I have one of the nicest mailboxes on this entire street. Well, maybe not, but it was nice. It looks good, it's going to serve the purpose, and overall it took about an hour start to finish to get this fully installed, and then to get everything cleaned up. The next item on the to-do list for this weekend was to get the trees marked that have to be cut down this fall. My buddy Steve's going to come back in a few weeks or next month, and we have probably about 11 more trees to take down once the canopy of leaves falls off these trees. And now the main task that's going to carry me through the next several weeks. Fortunately, I have some time off of work, maybe about 6 or 7 days over the next month, and during that time I plan on coming to the farm and doing some bulldozing. I have to move some trees that have fallen, or that I cut down. I have to level out a few piles of dirt that remain on the property from my initial cleanup about a month ago, or I don't know, maybe 2 months ago at this point. And then I want to scrape down the entire field and basically every other area that I had already stripped clear, so that I can get right back down to a blank canvas, bare dirt, so that I can prep the areas that are going to be planted next season, and so that I could go into this winter knowing that everything is smooth, level, and ready for the spring. Now, as you watch this, I know what you're thinking. I've read the comments. You shouldn't backblade with a bulldozer, or you shouldn't need to, or it ruins the blade, or causes wear and tear. I get it, but look at what I'm doing. I'm barely rubbing over the surface. I'm basically just removing the vegetative layer that has grown up in the past couple months. I'm not really moving a lot of dirt. I'm just skimming the surface. So this is what I plan to do over most of the property, just to get that layer of green back off of the field. I do have some cleanup to do, and I do have to move around some of the trees that have been pushed over, or stuff that's fallen in storms. There are some big piles of dirt and some small piles of dirt that still remain on this property that I need to spread out and level out. My goal is to have this entire field and the rest of the property pretty darn flat by the time spring comes. I want to be ready to roll and not have to worry about grading, leveling, or ground moving next year. And oops, well, the tree canopy this time of year looks very nice, so I guess we'll just watch that for a minute until I fix the camera. I did not forget I had to deal with the winch cable. So I backed the bulldozer up to where the end of the winch cable was, where I left it several weeks back, and I'm going to start the process of getting the winch cable back wound around the winch. So I tried to tape up the end just a little bit so there weren't a million fraying pieces of wire flying everywhere. But I did buy a very small U-bolt, and I wrapped the cable around the bulldozer winch one time. I tightened down the U-bolt, and then I put a piece of tape around it adhered to itself, just enough to keep it stuck as it made 1 or 2 rotations around the winch, and that was basically all that was needed. It started to wind itself, and the next 10 or 15 minutes of my life were consumed by guiding a winch cable around a spinning winch at extremely slow speeds. Thrilling stuff. And after many long weeks, the saga of the unspooled winch cable is finally at a close. Everything is spooled back properly, and I even got to use the winch again. An obvious problem at the farm is all of the trees that are laying over in the field that were cut down or fell down earlier this year. But I bought a new tool that may help with that. This is a log skidder that I purchased off Amazon. It simply clips to a chain or a winch, and you drag it across the ground, and it's supposed to move the trees. I'm only going to give you a quick sneak peek of it in action, though. This will be the source of a video coming up in probably a week. Does it work? Oh, it works, but that's it. More on that cool tool in a coming video. One of the last tasks that I wanted to accomplish today was to clear the little driveway area that I had previously cut into this area of the farm. Now, it had just started raining at this point, and it turned into a torrential downpour. So it cut my work short, but I was able to clear probably 50 feet of the driveway so that I can once again pull in off the road and have a safe place to park. but then I had to race out of there because it started to thunder and lightning. This time of year seems to race by. There's so little time and so much to do. Stay tuned, there's a lot more coming up. But that's all for this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.